Have you ever walked away from a conversation, a meeting, or even a casual chat feeling like a phantom? As if your voice, your thoughts, your very essence had been utterly erased? That gnawing sensation in your gut, the one that tells you you weren't heard, you weren't understood, you weren't even seen. Perhaps you've been in situations where the air crackles with aggression, where interruptions are the norm, and where a veneer of brash confidence steamrolls over genuine thought. You might have found yourself shrinking, believing that your quiet nature was a flaw, that a failure to retaliate meant defeat, that not engaging in the verbal sparring match was surrendering your ground. But what if I told you that this entire paradigm, this perceived need to fight fire with fire, is a grand deception? That the truest power isn't in the thunder of words, but in the profound resonance of their absence? Thinkers throughout history, those who dared to pierce through the veil of societal expectation, glimpsed a truth that eludes many. Those who spill their every thought reveal their every vulnerability. Those who desperately strive to convince are already operating from a position of weakness. The world, in its ceaseless clamor, dictates that we must defend our ideas, argue our points, and treat every dialogue as a battle for ultimate truth. Yet, a more ancient, more potent wisdom whispers a different path. A path of subtlety, of quiet potency, of infinitely greater intelligence. This wisdom suggests that silence is not merely the absence of sound, but an overwhelming, palpable presence. Silence disorients, it destabilizes. It compels the other to confront their own internal landscape, to grapple with their own projections. This journey is for you, the one who constantly feels overlooked, eclipsed, or invalidated. For you who leaves discussions with the bitter taste of unheard intentions. For you who is weary of being the convenient target, the accommodating soul, the peacemaker whose tranquility is exploited by others. You may have mistaken your silence for submission, but today, we will unveil silence as your most formidable weapon. True victory, you will come to understand, isn't about winning an argument, but about transcending the need to even enter one. Prepare to shed your old perceptions and embrace silence as not a void, but the definitive response. Let us delve into a philosophy that redefines power and discover how to command any situation without uttering a single syllable. Why do we possess such an insatiable urge to retort, to refute, to correct, to painstakingly prove our righteousness? Because at our core, we've been meticulously conditioned to believe that truth is a fortress that must be defended with every fiber of our being. That to remain silent is to concede defeat, to allow others to claim victory. But a deeper understanding reveals this compulsion as a symptom of our profoundest insecurity, the terror of appearing weak. And nestled behind this fear lies the ego, a fragile construct that shatters under scrutiny, that conflates disagreement with personal attack, and that transforms every conversation into a brutal battleground. Consider this. Most people, when they argue, are not truly seeking truth. They are seeking power. They are seeking to fortify their own beliefs, not because those beliefs are inherently sound, but because if those foundations tremble, their entire world crumbles. Argumentation, in this context, ceases to be a tool of wisdom. It becomes a defensive armor, a desperate shriek from the ego to cling to its dominion over the narrative. What does this profound insight mean for you? It means that the moment you feel that insistent pull to justify yourself, to painstakingly prove your point, you have already stepped onto their playing field, and you have already lost. For the mere necessity of explaining your stance betrays that you are still ensnared by the yearning for acceptance, validation, and understanding. This pervasive quest for approval, this desire to be perceived as good, correct, just, is precisely what keeps you tethered to weakness. True strength, a deeper philosophy suggests, resides not in the ability to sway others, but in the profound self-possession that renders such persuasion unnecessary. It lies in upholding your own vision, unwavering, even in the face of derision, scathing criticism, or outright rejection. It is the ability to be profoundly misunderstood and yet remain utterly unshaken. This perspective offers a type of power that is not measured in verbal triumphs, but in an unparalleled internal mastery. A power that blossoms from the capacity to remain utterly serene while chaos reigns around you. A power that amplifies when you transcend the impulse to react. If you truly aspire to prevail, you must internalize this fundamental truth. The game of discussion is a meticulously staged drama, and the first to leap onto the stage to perform has already forfeited. The reactive mind is a mind enslaved. The observing mind, however, is the formidable one, for it operates beyond the paltry need to prove anything. But then, if we are not to react, how do we exert influence? If words are inherently treacherous, how do we project our strength without uttering a single phrase? The answer lies in the ideal of the individual, who transcends the limitations of conventional morality and commands their world through absolute self-control. In the profound silence of this archetype, we discover the strategic deployment of silence as a potent instrument of influence. Are you ready to embrace this higher level of understanding? Because from this point onward, silence itself begins to speak. A truly profound philosophy is not for the faint of heart. It is for the select few who possess the unflinching courage to gaze inward, to confront their own perceived frailties, and to transmute them into indomitable strength. For many, conventional human existence is a trap, ensnared by societal norms, rigid moralities, and the insatiable craving for external adulation. But there exists another class of being, rare, formidable, and profoundly liberated. This elevated individual does not merely react to the world. They actively sculpt it in their own image. And the most astonishing aspect of their power, they often achieve this in profound stillness. This elevated individual does not require debates to validate their existence. They do not condescend to engage in superficial emotional theatrics. They observe. They comprehend. They meticulously select precisely when to speak and, crucially, when to remain absolutely silent. For they have grasped a truth that eludes the masses. Silence is itself a form of communication, a language that does not seek to persuade, but rather to impose an undeniable presence. The silence of such a being is not empty. It is a veiled threat. It is authority personified. It is the palpable sound of self-mastery. While others clamor, this individual commands respect with a mere gaze. While others exhaust themselves in explanations, they observe, and in their quietude, they expose the vulnerabilities of others simply through the serene power of their calm. Their silence is a formidable wall. Those on the opposing side writhe in desperation, striving to decipher what lies behind it, and in that agonizing uncertainty, they commit errors. They reveal too much. They lose their equilibrium. This silence is not passivity. It is an absolute command over one's own energetic reserves. It is a strategic economy of self. The elevated individual understands that every spoken word is a revealed tactical maneuver, every emotional outburst an involuntary shriek that exposes a point of weakness. That is why they remain quiet, not because they are devoid of words, but because they possess no need to utter them. They have transcended the impulse to prove anything to anyone. Their mere presence articulates volumes, and more profoundly, it discomfits, for their silence compels others to look inward, to confront their own internal cacophony. In a society drowning in noise, those who master silence are, in essence, royalty. This philosophy posits that such a person is one who forges their own values, their own principles, their own moral code. They are not beholden to anyone's validation, and it is precisely this autonomy that renders them formidable. For nothing destabilizes more profoundly than an individual who cannot be manipulated by guilt, by fear, or by the yearning for acceptance. Their silence is the impenetrable shield against all such manipulative mechanisms. And when they do speak, it is because their words possess the power to shatter empires. But this brings us to an essential question. What renders silence so profoundly disquieting to others? Why do so many individuals feel a palpable threat when someone simply elects not to react? What precisely transpires within the human psyche when the anticipated confrontation is replaced by an overwhelming void? The answer lies deep within the realm of psychology, and it is precisely what we shall meticulously explore next. For to truly grasp the profound power of silence, we must first comprehend the profound psychological chaos it unleashes within the minds of others. And believe me, its roots run far deeper than you can imagine. Silence is not merely the absence of auditory sensation. It is a mirror, and what it reflects back to many is utterly unbearable. When you consciously choose not to react, you are not simply quieting yourself. You are compelling the other person to confront the echoes of their own voice, to grapple with their own arguments stripped of the comforting buffer of external resistance. And that, precisely, is what causes profound destabilization. For most people do not speak to authentically express themselves. They speak to protect themselves, to reassure themselves, to obscure the chasm that exists between the words they utter and the true essence of who they are. And then, when you remain silent, their meticulously constructed facade crumbles. Social psychology has unequivocally demonstrated that in confrontational scenarios, silence is invariably perceived as a form of judgment. It matters not if you are simply listening. The speaker begins to feel acutely exposed, profoundly insecure. Why? Because without your response, without your reaction, they lose their tenuous grip on the narrative. The human brain immediately shifts into a state of heightened alert. The amygdala, the primal region responsible for fear and anxiety, instantly activates. The other person begins to project their own deeply embedded fears onto you. Is he judging me? Did she detect my insecurity? Does he know I'm bluffing? And in this intricate psychological battlefield, silence functions as an invisible blade. It cuts where no one can visibly see, yet everyone feels its searing edge. This profound insight was intuitively grasped long before modern psychology meticulously confirmed it. For the average individual, existence is a form of servitude to their own reactive impulses. They act on sheer impulse, react out of superficial vanity, and speak out of a deep-seated fear of being forgotten. The superior spirit, the one who has truly mastered themselves, remains silent, for they comprehend that every word carelessly dispensed is a strategic piece surrendered to the adversary. Every emotional outburst is an involuntary shriek that reveals precisely where to launch a devastating attack. Furthermore, silence wields a devastating effect on manipulators. Individuals who thrive on the emotional subjugation of others are utterly dependent on your reactions to remain engaged in their insidious game. When you refuse to react, you shatter their carefully constructed cycle, and the manipulator descends into a state of profound panic. They desperately require your response to validate their own precarious position. Without it, they become utterly lost. They expose their true selves. They reveal the profound weakness they have so assiduously attempted to conceal. But there is something even more profound at play. Silence also mercilessly triggers unresolved pains. It activates deep-seated traumas of rejection, of abandonment, of past humiliations. For suddenly, the other person recognizes that they are not the focal point of the universe, that their carefully chosen words are insufficient, that their very presence fails to create the desired impact. And this realization is utterly intolerable for the narcissistic ego. This is precisely why, when you remain silent, you are not merely defending yourself. You are striking at the very core of their illusion, precisely where it inflicts the most excruciating pain. This is why silence demands an extraordinary measure of inner fortitude. It is profoundly uncomfortable, not solely for others, but for you as well, for it directly contravenes every ingrained lesson, every primal impulse to react, to justify, to explain oneself. But it is precisely for this reason that its power is so immense, for it demands mastery, and mastery truly is the purest form of power. Now that you possess a profound understanding of how silence operates within the mind of the other, how it mercilessly activates insecurities, demolishes defenses, and unmasks carefully constructed facades, it is time to transcend mere observation. It is time to become someone who wields this strength with intentionality, with strategic precision. In the next segment, you will discover the exact methodology for transforming silence into a conscious, formidable weapon. You will learn precisely how to prevail in any exchange without uttering a single word. And once you master this formidable skill, no one will ever again possess the capacity to control you. The moment has arrived to cease merely comprehending the power of silence and to begin actively deploying it. For knowledge devoid of practical application is merely inert theory. From this moment forward, you will learn to transmute your silence into a precision weapon, no longer a mere defensive shield, but a finely honed blade poised to cleave through the masks of others at the precise moment they least anticipated. And the initial step, though deceptively simple, is brutally effective. Maintain absolute silence when your very being screams for a response. This demands an immense reservoir of inner strength. for every fiber of your being will clamor to react, to justify yourself, to painstakingly prove your righteousness. But that insistent desire is pure poison. Every instance you succumb to it, you reveal that you remain tethered to the control of others, that their opinions still hold sway over you, that you are still playing their intricate game. True, potent silence blossoms only when you utterly extinguish that need, when you comprehend that you owe nothing to anyone, that truth does not require vocalization to exist. The second formidable weapon of silence is meticulous observation. While others chatter incessantly, lose themselves in convoluted explanations, and desperately strive to fill every void with words, you listen. But you do not listen as one awaiting their turn to speak. You listen with the heightened senses of a seasoned hunter, tracking elusive prey through a dense forest. You perceive the latent fears concealed within the unspoken words, the subtle, telling contradictions, the deep-seated insecurities cleverly disguised as brazen arrogance. And you meticulously catalog all of this, for when you do eventually speak, if you speak at all, it will be a surgical strike, delivered with the precise mastery of one who intimately understands the emotional topography of the other. The third weapon, time. Learn to allow silence to stretch, to linger. The pause is an indispensable element of tension, and tension, profoundly, is power. While the other person speaks, frantically awaiting your reaction, and it simply does not arrive, they experience an internal implosion. The discomfort escalates. Their mind begins to frantically fill the void with assumptions, with fears, with gnawing paranoia. A simple, unwavering gaze from you, accompanied by profound silence, can exert an infinitely greater impact than 10 meticulously crafted sentences. The fourth weapon, unpredictability. When you truly master silence, you become an enigma, profoundly unpredictable. And the unpredictable is invariably feared, for people possess no framework for anticipating your next move. When they cannot predict your actions, they forfeit their advantage. They become cautious. They begin to meticulously weigh every single word. You fundamentally invert the established logic of interaction. From a state of being reactive, you transmute into the gravitational center of the entire conversation. At this juncture, silence is no longer an absence. It is pure, unadulterated dominance. But be warned. Do not, under any circumstances, conflate this potent silence with mere passivity. True strength was never an advocate of weakness. The silence we are discussing here is profoundly active, pulsating with tension, charged with unwavering intention. You are not simply withholding, you are meticulously preparing, choosing, strategically positioning yourself with a form of strength that requires no overt display to be acutely felt. And when the opportune moment presents itself, the moment when silence has already communicated everything it needed to, you may choose to speak. A single, potent sentence. A precise, cutting comment. Something that definitively concludes the discussion, not because it was louder, but because it was undeniably truer, profoundly deeper, utterly undeniable. But this leads us to an even more delicate, more insidious issue. For up to this point, we have focused on how to strategically employ silence to prevail. Yet, there are circumstances where the game is not merely about winning. It is about profound emotional survival. There are situations where individuals are not simply engaging in debate with you. They are actively exploiting you, manipulating you, draining your very essence. And you, perhaps without even realizing it, are relinquishing your power, piece by painful piece, every single day. You are being subtly dominated without a single word needing to be spoken. And this is where the darkest, most unsettling truth of this journey resides. When silence ceases to be a strategy and transforms into a silent, agonizing scream from one who has irrevocably lost control of their own life. In the next segment, we will brutally expose this truth, demonstrating how you may be unwittingly manipulated, perhaps without ever realizing it. For while you convince yourself you are adeptly sidestepping conflicts, someone else may be diligently constructing an empire upon the very foundation of your silence. And this chilling reality was long ago grasped by the profoundest thinkers. Is there any transgression more perverse than being silenced? It is being meticulously conditioned to believe that silence is your sole recourse, that swallowing your justifiable anger, perpetually conceding in discussions, and meticulously avoiding conflict at all costs are irrefutable markers of maturity, that to remain silent is an unequivocal sign of profound inner balance. But what if I told you that this could be a meticulously crafted trap, that frequently this particular brand of silence is not wisdom, but rather disguised submission? A profound philosophical insight revealed this with brutal clarity. What you affectionately term peace is, more often than not, merely your carefully domesticated surrender. Have you ever observed how certain individuals ruthlessly capitalize on your inherent calmness, your remarkable capacity to listen, to overlook, to assiduously avoid confrontation? They aggressively push their own agendas, relentlessly impose their wills, and brazenly occupy spaces that were rightfully yours, and you, in turn, permit them. You rationalize this passive acquiescence by convincing yourself that it is simply not worth the battle, that maintaining harmony is paramount, that, ultimately, it is not a significant transgression. But the stark, unvarnished truth is this: you are paying an exorbitantly high price for this illusory peace. And the most agonizing aspect? You are being mercilessly exploited by those who have astutely discerned that you will never, ever react. Philosophers have often spoken of a morality of slaves, that intricate value system meticulously constructed by the weak to eke out an existence in a world overwhelmingly dominated by the strong. It is the insidious morality of resignation, of guilt, of the constant compulsion to be nice. An invisible, pervasive code that meticulously instructs you to nullify your own being, to diminish your inherent worth, to complacently conform and yet paradoxically feel virtuous for doing so. But the profound insights of true philosophy were never intended for those who complacently resign themselves. They were forged for those who possess the audacious courage to shatter these very chains, for those who awaken to the chilling realization that they are being used and make the resolute decision to cease their participation in their own subjugation. When you tacitly embrace this particular brand of silence, the kind that inexorably devours you from within, you are, without conscious awareness, surrendering your inherent power. You are allowing yourself to be meticulously sculpted by the external expectations of others. You are no longer authentically yourself. You are merely what others desperately require you to be. And this, unequivocally, is the antithesis of true inner power. For the genuine will to power is not expressed through shouting, nor through the forceful domination of others. It is, profoundly, the absolute domination of oneself. It is the resolute act of reclaiming control over your own inherent narrative. It is the conscious choice to be silent, not because you are paralyzed by fear, but because you owe nothing, absolutely nothing, to anyone. This insidious silence of submission must be irrevocably extinguished, and in its hallowed place, the silence of unwavering presence must be born, the kind that refuses to bend, that scorns humiliation, that never apologizes for its very existence, the kind that stands unyielding amidst the swirling maelstrom of chaos and, without uttering a single word, fundamentally alters the very trajectory of the situation. This is the silence that true power would unequivocally respect. The silence of the individual who has become, in every sense of the word, the absolute master of themselves. But how does one ascend to this rarefied level? How does one transition from being a mere pawn, perpetually manipulated, to becoming the undisputed master of one's own presence? How does one systematically dismantle the herd morality within oneself and emerge reborn as an individual who commands profound authority, even in profound stillness? The answer lies in the most potent concept of ancient philosophy, the fully realized human. We have already alluded to this archetype. Now, the time has come to fully comprehend how to embody this new paradigm of human existence. In this final pivotal chapter, you will discover precisely what it takes to manifest this elevated form of being. For the world, quite frankly, does not require more incessant talkers. It desperately needs those who have mastered the profound art of silence and, through its potent dominion, reign supreme. We have arrived at the ultimate destination, and now I implore you to grasp one truth with every fiber of your being, with an unparalleled clarity. Silence is not an absence. It is not an emptiness. It is not merely the fleeting space between uttered sentences. True, profound silence is pure, unadulterated presence. It is the ultimate manifestation of mastery. It is the unequivocal sign that you are no longer passively reacting to the arbitrary whims of the world. You are actively, deliberately shaping it through your mere, formidable existence. True philosophical insights were never penned for those who are content to merely survive. They were meticulously crafted for those who possess an insatiable desire to transcend, for those who are resolutely willing to tear off the suffocating masks that society has so cruelly imposed, even if the act itself inflicts agonizing pain. The silence of the truly realized individual is not the silence of the oppressed, nor the furtive silence of the coward. It is, profoundly, the silence of the seasoned warrior, who has already achieved an insurmountable victory even before the very first shot of battle is fired. It is the serene stillness of one who no longer possesses the desperate need to prove anything, absolutely anything, to anyone, for they possess an unwavering, profound self-knowledge. And, even more critically, they inherently know what they truly deserve. Now, I implore you to cast a penetrating gaze upon your own life. How many countless times have you chosen to remain silent out of paralyzing fear, out of ingrained guilt, out of a deeply ingrained desire to avoid even the slightest disturbance? How many times have you passively permitted others to make momentous decisions on your behalf, to speak for you, to mercilessly trample upon your sacred truth? Enough. A profound philosophical wisdom would declare that to live in such a manner is a grievous offense to existence itself, that to complacently accept this insidious kind of silence is, in its essence, the ultimate act of self-betrayal. From this very day forward, your silence needs to undergo a radical metamorphosis in its very tone. It needs to cease being a mere escape and to transform into an invisible yet thunderous shout of unassailable authority. A clearly defined boundary, an unwavering affirmation of precisely who you are, even if no one around you truly comprehends it. For who you are does not necessitate comprehension. It demands to be lived authentically and unapologetically. And that, unequivocally, demands an extraordinary measure of courage. Do you possess that indomitable courage? Then I invite you to declare it unequivocally in the comments below. I choose the silence that commands respect, not merely so that I may acknowledge your journey to this profound understanding, but so that you may publicly affirm this monumental choice, this unwavering commitment to your own profound self. For words possess an inherent, formidable power, even when they eloquently articulate the very concept of silence itself, and do not, under any circumstances, halt your pursuit here. The subsequent philosophical insights are absolutely essential. They will profoundly expand upon what you have assimilated here and propel your mind even further into the realm of true mastery. Absorb them, not for my benefit, but because you intrinsically deserve to transcend all limitations. And always, always remember, the weak incessantly shout, the strong remain profoundly silent. The wise, however, meticulously choose when to speak. Thanks for watching. If this resonated, please like this video and subscribe to stay updated. I look forward to continuing this journey with you. Until next time, take care and be present.